I'm Isaac from the Mountain Takes, and today we are looking at a tragedy that proves the most brutal battles aren't always fought against the freezing wind, but against the hidden cruelty of human society. On May 21, 2026, a man named Bijaya Gimir Bishwakarma stood at the highest camp on Mount Everest, looking up at the final icy ridge. For generations, the world has been told that the people who guide climbers on Everest are all part of a single unified group who share the mountain's rewards, but that is a beautifully crafted lie designed for travel brochures. In reality, the high altitudes of Nepal carry the same dark, invisible walls of discrimination that have crushed human spirits on the ground for centuries. What the international media never shows you is the chilling truth that beneath the colorful down suits, an ancient human curse is actively separating the masters from the servants on the highest frozen slopes of the earth. If you are born with the wrong family name, the system ensures your only job is to carry the heavy filth of wealthy foreigners until your knees buckle in the snow. Bijaya was a Dalit, a community historically trapped at the absolute bottom of a cruel caste system, often labeled as untouchables. No one from his community had ever been allowed to claim the title of an Everest summit guide. They were kept in the shadows, cleaning toilets at base camp or carrying the heaviest, dirtiest loads for a fraction of the pay. But Bijaya refused to accept the cage society built for him. He trained in secret, fought through endless closed doors, and arrived at Everest in April 2026 to break a 1,000-year-old curse. He wanted to become the first Dalit climber to conquer the peak and prove that the mountain doesn't care about the name you were born with. He successfully reached the top, turning his lifetime of struggle into a historic victory. But the mountain has a terrifying way of balancing the scales. On his way down, inside the absolute chaos of the Khumbu Icefall, the sheer physical toll of breaking those social chains caught up with him. Stay with me, because today we are stripping away the glossy mountaineering legends to expose the silent war of castes, the hidden heroes of the lower slopes, and the tragic price one man paid to prove he was equal to the world's greatest climbers. To truly understand why Bijaya's presence at 26,000 feet was a revolution, you have to look down at the valleys below. For hundreds of years, the lucrative business of high-altitude guiding on Everest has been heavily dominated by specific ethnic clans who held the social and financial monopoly over the tourism industry. If you were born into a Dalit family in the remote villages of Nepal, your destiny was already written before you could even walk. You were expected to do the manual labor that wealthier classes refused to touch. When the commercial climbing industry exploded, thousands of young Dalit men migrated to Everest Base Camp looking for a survival wage, but when they arrived, the invisible walls of the caste system followed them up the trail. While other young men were fast-tracked into prestigious guiding roles and given expensive high-altitude gear, Dalit workers were systematically pushed into the lowest-tier jobs. They became the camp porters, the kitchen helpers, and the waste clearers. They carried 80-pound barrels of human waste down from the high camps on their backs, stepping aside. On the icy trails, as wealthy foreign clients and elite guides walked past them without a second glance. They were essential to the survival of every single expedition, yet their names never appeared on any summit certificates. The entire multi-million-dollar industry rested on their bleeding shoulders, but their identity was completely erased from the history books. Bijaya Gimir grew up watching this quiet injustice, and a slow, burning defiance began to shape his life. He didn't want to spend his youth carrying the trash of the elite. He spent years watching the mechanics of the mountain, studying how the ice shifted, and practicing how to balance his body on the narrow aluminum ladders bridging the deep crevasses. Whenever an expedition ended and the wealthy clients left, Bijaya would borrow discarded, semi-broken crampons and old ropes to practice ice climbing in the dark, away from the mocking eyes of the established guiding elite. He applied to dozens of commercial agencies for a chance to work as a formal climbing Sherpa, but his resume was repeatedly thrown into the trash the moment managers saw his caste name Bishwakarma. To them, a Dalit belonged in the kitchen tent, not on the safety lines of the death zone. But Bijaya kept pushing. He saved every single rupee from his low-wage porter jobs, skipped meals, and eventually managed to secure a basic climbing permit through a low-cost independent operator who didn't care about social politics as long as the cash was paid. He knew he didn't have the premium backup options or the high-end emergency rescue insurance that other wealthy climbers had, but his internal drive was far more powerful than any corporate sponsorship. When the 2026 spring climbing season opened, Bijaya stepped onto the glacier, not as a servant carrying someone else's luxury items, but as a historic contender. The atmosphere at base camp was thick with silent tension. Many traditional guides looked at him with cold indifference, believing his presence was a violation of the old mountain hierarchies. But Bijaya ignored the stares. He moved up through the camps with a fierce, quiet intensity. He wasn't just climbing for a personal photo or a corporate sponsorship. He was carrying the dignity of millions of people who had been told for generations that their hands were unclean. The mountain during May 2026 was unforgiving, showing unpredictable weather changes and dangerous ice shifts every single day. While other teams rested inside their luxury heated tents at Camp 2, Bijaya was out there on the ice, pushing his body to the absolute limit of physical survival. By the time he reached Camp 4 at 26,000 feet on May 20th, his body was deeply exhausted, but his mind was completely hyper-focused. He knew that if he failed, his failure would be used by critics to justify keeping his community out of the mountains forever. Failure wasn't just a personal setback, it was a death sentence for the hopes of an entire generation. The summit push began in the freezing darkness of May 21st, 2026. The route was crowded, a slow-moving line of flashing headlamps stretching toward the sky. The temperature had dropped to a brutal -30 degrees, and the low-frequency drone of the wind was a constant reminder of how thin the line between life and death truly is up there. Bijaya moved with steady, relentless rhythm, his breath heavy and mechanical inside his oxygen mask. Every step upward on the steep, blue ice was a physical demolition of the caste system that had held his family down for centuries. His oxygen cylinder was older and heavier than the standard carbon fiber tanks used by the elite teams, cutting deeply into his shoulders with every foot of altitude he gained. Yet, he refused to slow down or let anyone see him falter. As the sun began to rise over the Tibetan plateau, painting the endless rows of peaks in a sharp, blinding gold, Bijaya passed the final rocky obstacles of the southeast ridge. At approximately 8:45 a.m., he stepped onto the absolute summit of Mount Everest. He pulled down his mask, took a deep breath of the thin, freezing air, and held up a small, handwritten sign dedicated to his community. For a brief, beautiful moment, a Dalit was standing higher than any king, priest, or landlord on the face of the earth. He had broken the caste curse. He had won. But the architecture of Everest is completely heartless, and it doesn't give discounts for historical justice. The moment a climber turns around to descend, the massive adrenaline rush that kept their organs functioning begins to evaporate, leaving behind a body that is running on absolute zero. As Bijaya moved down from the high camps toward the lower sections of the mountain, the cumulative strain of his years of underfunded training and the immense psychological pressure of the expedition began to take a silent, lethal toll on his cardiovascular system. His body had been operating under extreme hypoxia for more than 24 hours, and his heart was silently swelling under the intense pressure of pumping thick, dehydrated blood through his frozen veins. By the time he reached the upper entrance of the Khumbu Icefall on May 22nd, his movements had become heavy and uncoordinated. The icefall is a shifting, unstable labyrinth of multi-ton ice blocks that can collapse without a single second of warning. It is a place where human beings look like ants moving through a falling wall of glass, requiring absolute physical precision to navigate safely. Deep inside the chaotic heart of the icefall, surrounded by towering walls of unstable white ice and deep, dark crevasses, Bijaya's heart simply reached its absolute structural limit. The extreme altitude, combined with profound physical exhaustion and deep cellular dehydration, triggered a massive sudden cardiac arrest. He collapsed directly onto the fixed safety line, his hands freezing around the nylon rope as his eyes rolled back. Other climbers and passing porters rushed to his side, trying desperately to administer emergency medications, inject steroids, and check his fading vitals. But there are no emergency rooms, no heated shelters, and no advanced life support systems inside a shifting maze of crashing ice. Within minutes, the historic climber grew completely still. His lungs stopped processing the thin air, and his heart gave its final beat against the hard blue ice of the glacier. The very ice he had spent his entire life trying to conquer had claimed him just hours after he had proven he was equal to it. The news of his death sent a profound shockwave through the entire mountaineering community. Bijaya Gimir Bishwakarma had achieved his impossible dream of breaking the caste barrier at 29,032 feet. But the mountain ensured he would never walk back down to celebrate it with the people he fought for. His victory was complete, but his survival was denied. The tragedy was compounded by the fact that because he climbed with a low-cost independent operator, there was no massive corporate rescue crew waiting to recover his body. But the caste system that had rejected him in life could not stop the fierce loyalty of his people in death. A group of young Dalit porters, men who had spent their lives carrying the heaviest loads in the background, organized their own dangerous rescue mission. They moved up into the unstable, cracking hazards of the Khumbu Icefall without proper backup, risking their own lives to ensure their hero wouldn't become a permanent frozen marker for wealthy tourists to step over. They cut his body from the frozen lines and carried him down on their shoulders, weeping openly on the raw gravel of the glacier. His legacy now stands as a permanent, powerful fracture in the old social structures of the Himalayas. He proved to the entire world that the ice doesn't care about ancient human divisions or social labels, but his frozen resting place remains a stark, haunting reminder that sometimes the cost of breaking a lifetime of chains is everything you have left to give. I'm Isaac from the Mountain Takes. If you believe that human dignity is worth fighting for no matter the cost, and if you respect the hidden heroes who carry the heaviest loads in the darkest shadows, hit that subscribe button. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you on the next descent.
Meow.